Hello, free people of Earth, and welcome to This Week in Tyranny, the most hardcore news show on Earth. A weekly program about authoritarianism, government overreach, and global injustice. Live from Chicago, Illinois. If tyranny is not at your doorstep, that's because there is someone in the street keeping it at bay.
We murdered my man like it was okay. For the life he ended, he got suspended with no pay. But if a man would've took the cop life, he would've got life and never again see the street lights, and that's right.
Welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Conrad Rogas. Today is Friday, June 16th, 2023. This is episode 28 of This Week in Tyranny, and this episode is going to be some more about economic tyranny and the interest rates. But first, I have to mention, if you hear some noise, it's coming from outside. They're actually paving the streets outside. So I don't know why this stuff always happens when I do my show, but it happens. They're paving the streets. This is a street-wide show anyway. So we're going to get right into it, and we're not going to let the outside distractions stop us, hopefully. So the tyranny this week is on Wednesday. It came out that the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, announced that it would not raise interest rates. And this is coming after a series of raising the interest rates incrementally over the past several months. Then on Thursday, the next day, the European Central Bank kept raising the interest rates. Okay, the interest rates in Europe were raised to the highest levels they've been in over 20 years. Okay, so people are talking about this. Some people are getting excited about, the interest rates not going up any higher. This is affecting different types of people, of course. It's not so much affecting people like me directly. It's affecting people who have mortgages out or are taking out loans, right? Interest rates. It's definitely affecting financial institutions. But it is going to affect everybody, and this gives me an opportunity to talk about money. So I'm going to talk about first principles, as I talk about first principles with all the topics. But specifically this week, I'm going to talk about the first principles of money and economics. It's kind of a continuation of the show of 2 weeks ago, where I talked about the migrant crisis in Venezuela. I also got into the occult aspects of money, and this is going to be a more in-depth exploration of that. Since economic tyranny is the current weapon deployed against the people, this is the main weapon deployed against us. Of course, there's institutional top-down government control. There's different types of, there's mind control, epigenetic programming. This is all happening, but the big one, I think one of the strongest is economic tyranny, and it's the one we all feel. We all feel this. We are all busier. We have to work more. Things are costing us more. So economic tyranny is a main weapon utilized against us. I'm going to talk about that. So real quick, an overview of interest rates. Why does it matter? What's an interest rate? So interest rates are the percentages that a corporation must pay a central bank to borrow money from them. Okay, this method of borrowing is called usury. It's borrowing at a percentage. It is an inherently predatory practice, right? But we call this monetary policy. We think it's okay because the government says it's okay. But this is this is a tactic that borders on immorality, right? You're going to lend someone money, but they're going to pay you more. And interest rates ultimately control credit. That's the main thing they do. They control credit because anything you borrow, you're going to borrow it at a percentage. So whenever you want to engage in some type of entrepreneurial venture or business, you're expanding your business, you're going to need to take credit out. So that's why interest rates matter. When the interest rates are low, then that means there's more borrowing, there's more spending, and there's more economic activity. Okay, lower rate means you're more likely, more confident to take out a loan and then expand and then create economic growth that way. High interest rates, on the other hand, means it's more costly for you to get a loan, so there's more hesitance and more fear. So high interest rates are going to drive stagnation and economic contraction. So 2 weeks ago I talked about how Economic health is basically just a measure of activity, not just financial activity, but even like physical activity. How healthy an economy is based on how active are the people, how much are they doing, right? How much are they producing? And 2 weeks ago, I also talked about that fear kills finance, fear kills wealth. Okay, if you're afraid, you're not going to go and make money, you're not going to take the risk, take the initiative. Fear is basically a thing that always goes along with poverty. Just like morality is directly proportional to freedom, fear is directly proportional to poverty, okay, and economic disadvantageous positions. So I want to expand on the interest rate specifically and why it is done like this, right? There's a purpose for why things are done this way. It's not just that the money system is broken. It is done like this for a reason. So first, I have to talk about what money is. What is money? Money is an invention for slaves to exchange resources easily amongst each other. Okay? It's not for free people. Money is not for living, breathing individuals who own property, right? Because in a world of truly free and evolved adults, people enter into personal agreements with each other on how they want to exchange resources and services, right? That's what would happen in a real economy, in a real society. Having a common currency or like a medium of exchange, which is what our money is useful either when you need to get something done quickly, when you need a transaction done quickly, or when you know nothing about and have nothing in common with the person that you're making a transaction with. And this is what we have. We have a slave economy. We never have enough time to do things. We never have enough money. And we're always trying to get a one-up on strangers, right? We don't really know the people that we are engaging in transactions with. So there's no individuality, no compassion, just numbers. Okay, money is just numbers. I'll expand on this, but I kind of want to explain more what I mean about personal agreements without money, because I know that people can't really imagine this. This seems like a very foreign concept. But the same thing that you get accomplished by giving somebody paper currency for a particular service, people would get in people would make agreements based on what they want, implied and explicit, right? So you could still have contracts and everything, but basically it's about what people can provide for each other, okay? The same way it is in relationships, the same way it is in nature, okay? There's no money in nature. There are exchanges. There are mutually beneficial relationships between animals of different species. It'll lose my mind what this is called. I think there's a biological term for it, but it's basically mutual relationships between different species. They have an agreement. Okay, it's implied, of course, because they cannot communicate and speak the same language, but they're agreements of doing the things that they need to get done, that they could do for each other, that they couldn't do by themselves. And this is the same thing humans do. But humans use the proxy of money to get those things done, because we don't have a common language. We don't have that implied natural language. So not to get too deep too early, I'm going to go step by step. So we have a slave economy. We are slaves. And numbers control the whole game, right? The people at the top of the pyramid, they don't use money between each other, right? Because they already have so much. The most powerful people in the world have access to so much money that it wouldn't even make sense for them to use it. It's like if we were to go into transactions with people based on how much, just dirt. You could just pick dirt up off the ground. It doesn't make sense for you to use that resource. There's too much of it. It's insignificant to them, right? So the people who are really powerful in this world exchange other things. And they have individual agreements on what they are going to do with each other, right? Based on their positions and their capabilities. Money, whether it is digital cryptocurrency or dollars or gold, is just a system of allocating resources, right? Keeping track of resources, assigning resources. So the amount that you have just indicates to other people how much resources you deserve or are allowed to have. See, it's really an evaluation of your worth and value as a human being. Okay, it's actually very antithetical to human dignity. And this maintains and reinforces the corporate hierarchy, which is a pyramid. The corporate hierarchy is a top-down pyramid, where the CEO and the shareholders are at the top, and the regular workers are at the bottom, right? And different managerial positions going up the pyramid. And the reason it enforces the corporate hierarchy is because it's very difficult to significantly change your economic class. I know people go from rags to riches, but in general, people do not move too far out of their economic strata. It does not happen. And people will actually classify and separate themselves according to how much money they have. So the interactions they have are with people who have roughly the same amount of money. So this actually reinforces these classes. It makes them more solid and more airtight through money. Okay? So, and also when somebody from a higher economic class, like say a rich person, approaches someone from a lower economic class and needs something done, because of how much money they have, the person from the lower economic class will just bend over backwards to do it for them. And this is like how it works in slavery. When a slave had somebody, had a non-slave approach them, they basically would do anything for them. Not just because of the physical coercion, but also because of the mental programming. Money is like an indicator of a person's self-worth to us. So when somebody has a lot to it, then we think we have to do so much for that person because they're so incredible, right? This is implied in the mind control. And this arbitrary method of allocating resources and defining value is what enables a creation of a prison without a cage, prison without bars, farm without a fence, a plantation with no overseers. Otherwise, without money, everybody would actually need to be tightly controlled. We would need to be, harshly controlled to control our actions. We would need to be censored all the time. We would need to be coerced all the time. Whereas most of the time we're not coerced, only implicitly, but how we are controlled is through money. And through the system of money, the people become their own overseers, their own policemen, okay? Their own enforcers of the corporate hierarchy, which is the same thing as the system of slavery. So that's the true and ancient and occult origin of money, right? Now, does that mean that money is what ultimately controls the world? Am I saying that the richest person in the world is like this huge slave master who controls everybody and he's at the top of the pyramid? That's not what I'm saying, because I talked about this 2 weeks ago about the occult web of control. It's not a pyramid, it's a web, and money is just one of the several arms of the spider that's in the middle of the occult web of control. So some of these arms, it's like money, religion. Then you have the people that control the military and physical control, like governments. Okay. Then you have powerful people in science and medicine, the whole science and medicine, not just the industries, but the ideological leaders of those ideologies and those religions of science and medicine. And then technology, they call big tech, right? These are different arms of the spider, okay? So it's not just controlled by money. It's not. The world isn't just controlled by bankers. This is what a lot of people don't get, is that there are different groups at the top of these aspects of society that work together, okay? They're at the pinnacle of their pyramid, their respective pyramid. And that's why I liken it to a web, because it's like you combine all those different pyramids, like 5 or 6 pyramids, around the central point where the tops of those pyramids form an inner circle, okay? So, and the center, in that occult web of control, the true web that controls everything that is done in the world. In the beginning, in the middle of that is the big black spider, which is an ideology called Satanism. It's not a person, it's not a group of people, it's not a secret society in that sense. It's an ideology. The ideology is Satanism, which I talk about more. 2 weeks ago, I'm not really going to go over it. That is the religion and ideology that is much more important than the individuals. It doesn't even matter what their names are, because even if we were to take them out, somebody is going to fill their place as long as the current structure of the world continues. And I don't just mean the infrastructure and the physical systems of control. I mean the mental structure of the world. The universe is mental, and right now the mental structure of the world is slavery. That's why we believe in money. Money is one of those arms that pulls the strings of the web. And who controls the money supply is the central bankers. That's the top of that sub-pyramid, okay? And through the central banks, the inner circle, ruling class, dark occultists, they utilize a method based on this dark occult concept that I'm going to talk about. The dark occult is basically ancient knowledge of how to manipulate people psychologically and control them, okay? That's what the dark occult is. And that method they use is the boom-bust economic cycle. So interest rates rhythmically will rise and fall over the years, over decades. And the economy always swings like a pendulum from one side to the other. Back and forth between expansion and contraction, right? Now, the central banks, they say that the reason they make higher interest rates, that they set them, is to counter inflation. Okay, so they say that they're trying to stabilize the economy and keep it healthier, and that's why they increase interest rates. What they don't tell you is they're the same ones creating the inflation by printing the money. Okay, they're creating the inflation in the first place to do this. So they're creating the issue and the solution. Okay, the economy doesn't need central management or third-party intervention or financial regulations. These are just lame excuses for the lazy public to justify to themselves why they are allowing themselves to be stolen from day after day after day through the fees and the taxes that have completely no basis in reality and in nature, and they are wrong and they are theft, okay? And not just stolen through taxes and fees. We're stolen from through the hidden tax called inflation. That is a hidden tax. You have the same amount of money, but you're decreasing the value. So you're like decreasing how much you have. So that's actually theft. It's like taking the money out of your pocket. And really, the printing of money and interest rates are essentially a way for central banks to steal money from your pocket without ever putting their hand in. It's an ingenious system, right? When put this simply, you may ask, how can the world not see this when it is so simple? Well, like I said, the dark occultists are smart. Okay, the push-pull, boom-bust cycle of polarity is the most effective way to put people into a state of denial. Okay, that's why we have, say, 5 to 10 years of economic prosperity. It looks like things are good. Gas prices go down, followed by a crisis. Something happens. The COVID-19 pandemic. Boom, crisis happens, followed by 5 or 10 or who knows how many years of hard labor. I say that relatively because most people aren't doing hard labor, but yeah, hard labor for low returns. Things are getting tougher, higher prices, more time you have to spend working, less time you spend learning, less time you spend with your family. When times are good, people wish that the good times will last. They think that the good times will always last. That's like a psychological thing we have as humans, right? And people will hold on to that misguided optimism for way too long. But then when times are bad, then people, they panic, they get anxious, and they will do anything for safety and security. And thus, they will sell their freedom for cheap. Okay? And this back and forth swing, it not only makes more money from the central banker dark occultists, but also it gets them more control. Now they make more money because people will spend and borrow excessively in extreme emotional states of either joy and like belief and optimism. So they'll borrow way more and undertake all these economic ventures, as well as the fear and stress, the other extreme end of the emotional spectrum, right? When people are afraid, they will buy more things as well because they're trying to like fill a void. They're going to buy more alcohol, things like that. When people are stressed, they make worse economic decisions, right? And they will choose instant security and instant gratification in an economic sense, as opposed to long-term planning. So that also makes the central bankers more money because that money funnels up the pyramid, okay? And it also gets them more control because that violent momentum, those swings from good to bad, it cultivates a desire for stability, okay? It's like an internal, it's the inertia we have within us. When things are all wobbling out at sea, we want to grab onto something and be safe, okay? Which is offered by the central bankers. They'll say they'll keep you safe. Insurance, they'll give you all this. This is, of course, a proxy of safety. But I want to go on a deeper psychological level. The deepest psychological level of this is that these economic cycles, this boom-bust cycle, it mirrors the life of an addict, a drug addict, a hard drug addict, like I was. And this is exactly what they do to people. Okay, not everybody's going to, do cocaine and freebase it. Not everybody's going to sniff heroin and do things like that, right? But everybody is addicted to the money and the money dealers, and money is, of course, deeply tied into emotions. If you want to learn more about this, you should watch my presentation that I always put at the end of the video. It's called Babyface Criminality. It's a extended presentation about many things, about how all the things that the institutions of our world do are actually plain street crimes. Okay, this is a streetwise show, and money is one of those things. And I talk about scamming, I talk about gambling. These are all things that the institutions of the world are engaged in. Back to the life of a drug addict. You have extreme highs and extreme lows. This is how it happens. And you never feel stable. You never have any power. Your life is just an endless cycle of withdrawals and binges, and you never get your foot in the, you feel like you're in quicksand. And ultimately, this kind of push-pull, this swing from extreme high to extreme low, you'll never be able to get anything done. You'll never get your principles in order. You'll never be able to be your true self, to be a trustworthy and upstanding, honest human being. You're always fighting an uphill battle. You're always a day late and a dollar short. You have no power, and ultimately, the life of a drug addict is total slavery. And this is what the world is coming to. Everybody's addicted. This is why my first video I ever made, how I started this channel, is called Dependence on Systems of Control. We're going all the way around, and it's still the same problem. It's addiction to these systems because of the void in our psychology, because of the abandonment and trauma from our childhood. And this is what creates the space for these occultists and Satanists to rule, because they know something that you guys don't. And that's what This Week in Tyranny is all about. That's all I'll say. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.